According to the mental telegram theory, the spiritually ascended Jesus actually telegraphed real resurrection-like visions from heaven to his earthbound disciples in an effort to keep his spirit alive in their minds. The visions were apparently so vivid, all the disciples incorrectly believed they had seen the physically resurrected Jesus in their midst. This theory fails to account for reality of the empty tomb, which even the ancient enemies and nearly all modern critics of Christ have admitted. Jesus' body would have remained in the grave and subsequently been carted throughout Jerusalem by the Jewish religious authorities, or Romans, if he had simply sent mental images. Also, if Christ really had sent genuine mental images from heaven, then we must conclude he was endowed with divine attributes, for no mere mortal can do this. So this theory seems to defeat the central purpose of most skeptics, which is to demonstrate Jesus was not God. Further, a vision has never inspired someone to turn the world upside down as they voluntarily suffer and die, yet this is exactly what the apostles of Christ did. Additionally, this theory fails to account for the fact Christ did appear in a tangible form to his followers. He was actually touched by his disciples as he walked, talked, and ate with them on several occasions over a 40-day period. Another problem is strong skeptics like Thomas would have not been willing to suffer and die without the physical appearance of Christ. Finally, this theory fails to explain how thousands of former Jews, deadly persecutors like Paul, and doubters like James, Jude, and Peter became so convinced in the reality of Jesus' resurrection they were willing to offer their lives to spread his gospel message. The vivid memories theory claims Jesus' disciples' powerful lasting memory of him following the supposed resurrection caused him to speak and act like he had really risen when in fact he had not. This theory fails to explain the empty tomb, whose reality has been admitted by Jesus' ancient critics. If Jesus' body still laid in the tomb, then his enemies would have gladly displayed it to all, and Christianity would have been stomped into oblivion. Also, Jesus' disciples did not believe or understand the resurrection until after they were presented with repeated physical proof. They could not have been convinced and surely would not have willingly suffered and died for a self-concocted lie. Further, mere mental images would not have convinced doubting disciples like Thomas, who absolutely required physical evidence. Additionally, we have no reason to believe James, Jude, Peter, Paul, and thousands of Jews would have all given their lives for Christ without tangible evidence. Finally, there was physical proof for the risen Christ through the numerous unmistakable post-resurrection signs he had offered them. Some have insisted Peter felt so awful about his denial of Christ and was so distraught over his subsequent death he simply imagined Jesus had risen. Peter was then apparently able to quickly persuade countless people he had really seen Christ. This theory is impossible for several reasons. First, Peter himself openly denied Jesus' teaching concerning the resurrection in Mark 8:31-33, expressing his lack of belief and understanding. He would not have imagined, suffered greatly, and then willingly died for a doctrine he did not understand or even want to believe. Also, John 21:3 and 1 Peter was resigned to the fact Christ was forever dead when he said, "I go a-fishing." If he really imagined a risen Christ, then he would have been busy spreading this news abroad instead of fishing aboard a boat. In reality, Christ actually had to repeatedly prompt Peter to spread the gospel, as we learn from John 21:15-17. Further, Peter, who had denied Christ 3 times just days earlier, was not a candidate for easy believism. It took several repeated physical encounters with the risen Christ to fully convince him to suffer and sacrifice his life. It is highly unlikely a mere imaginary vision would have done the trick. Additionally, there is no way Peter could have convinced his fellow disciples, including skeptical Thomas, Christ's critical brothers James and Jude, the persecuting Paul, and thousands of Jews that Jesus had indeed risen based upon his imaginary fable. These all would have certainly needed physical evidence for motivation to sacrifice their lives on Jesus' behalf. Also, if Christ had really risen only in Peter's imagination, then Jesus' body still would have laid in the tomb, and the Jewish religious authorities or Roman government would have quickly highlighted this fact as they carted his body around Jerusalem to effectively kill Christianity. Finally, it is noted in several Bible passages that Peter and the other disciples actually saw, touched, walked, talked, and ate with the physically risen Christ. The resurrection was not imaginary.